panel discussion when it comes to elite athletes. And I've got some very special friends and guests with me. Dwight Phillips. You know, one of my bucket list items was to shake hands with an Olympic athlete, and I did it just 5 minutes ago. Dwight is the business development director for Quaiware. He's a 5-time U.S. outdoor champion and Olympic gold medalist from the Athens Games, and still ranks as one of the fastest men running the 60 meters. Quaiware is a headset that trains with you, monitoring sport performance and provides voice feedback. So I assume your coach is on the sideline talking to you as you're doing your run or your performance. So Dwight, tell us more about Quaiware and where elite athletes are using this type of wearable technology.
Well, Quaiware is one of the world's first multi-sport biometric headphones. And what it essentially does is it tracks the acceleration patterns, the cadence, your VO2 max, and it gives you all this valuable data that allows you to optimize your performance. And athletes are using it across the globe. I am the chairman for the athlete advisory for USA Track and Field. So a lot of our Olympic caliber athletes and emerging athletes will be using Quaiware moving forward, starting in 2016, moving forward. So Quaiware is definitely revolutionary. It's DiFit compatible. You can use it whether you're a cycler, a swimmer, or a runner, and it tracks, gives you that important data that's going to help you take your performances to another level.
Thank you for that, Dwight. Let's go to Dwight's left. Cao Ping is director of Wellbeing Digital Limited. It's a Hong Kong-based company that aims to enable affordable and accurate use of technology for wearable devices. Cao is a graduate of NTU from Singapore and holds 5 patents in his own name. Cao, it sounds like your company is a service provider to existing wearables. So tell us more about the company and what made you decide to partner with others rather than build your own?
I think when we first started developing our patents, and we have like more than 30 today, that was back in 2007. At the time, the word wearable will conjure other images, you know, like clothes and whatever, and not a piece of data tracking device that you have on you. And therefore, wearable market in itself is still very infancy stage. And we decided that by focusing on R&D, making things accurate, small, low power consumption, we want to be able to stick to different parts of your body. You know, if you wear a piece of glasses, if you wear earphones, you know, we put in your earphones, you put in your shoe. So we want to focus on that and want to kind of spread our bets all over. That's the reason. And of course, by betting on R&D and not doing our own products, we don't kind of, we can focus on just one section instead of just, you know, spreading our resources over marketing, production, and so on.
Thank you for that. My friend, Marty Maytek is founder and president of VERT, a company focused on wearable technologies with broadcast and social integration. Marty, you are a graduate of the University of Florida.
I am.
With a degree in advertising, with an outside concentration of all things astrophysics. We'll talk about that in a second. But prior to work, you worked in the advertising industry. So tell us a little bit more about VERT and how your experience in the advertising industry is helping you now in the wearable industry.
Okay, thanks. And good to see you again.
Thank you.
So VERT is a wearable jump device. That's how we started last year. That's where I met Ted actually on another panel. And we immediately focused on measuring accurately how high someone can jump and how many jumps they actually have. And we quickly became the official wearable technology of USA Volleyball. We are in hundreds of colleges throughout the country. And what we didn't realize how important it was actually that injury prevention side. I always looked at it from the marketing angle of being able to see that wow factor. Okay, when someone jumps 40 inches, that's amazing, and you can relate to that, I'm sure. But then what happened was broadcast saw it, and they immediately realized that you can integrate this on live TV. So the NCAA approved it in volleyball, and we were the first wearable to be on broadcast with ESPN producing it, which I think is a big move for wearables. It's kind of breaking that foundation of, hey, this is coming and let's be part of it. The other piece that we were developing as a company is the social applications of that, because we're pumping all the data out there to whoever wants to see it. So if it's a commentator saying, hey, that was an amazing act, it was 30 inches and they've already jumped, 100 times in the game. It's new stuff to talk about. I think it's important for everyone on this panel over here. And at the show, we also just announced Vert 2, which measures intensity. And so for any athlete, being able to measure that movement and G-force and have that accumulation effect, it's important because I think it's the next step, no pun intended, from doing step counting. It's actually measuring effort. And what ends up happening though is as you start accumulating that data, it falls back into injury prevention again, because when you start overlaying things like heart rate and jump measurements and intensity measurements, we are becoming this a predictive indicator of injury prevention, at the same time wowing the fans with what data is going on with things.
Thank you, Marty. And to my right is Bruce Yanni. He is the CEO of Shot Tracker, which is an interactive technology company focused on college basketball. And you are working with 7 major conferences. Shot Tracker is a wearable that tracks shots attempts, the makes and the misses. Tell us more about Shot Tracker and why players and coaches would want that type of information.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm stepping in for my COO, Davion Ross. He's 6'6" and black, and I'm not, although I identify as black. We at Shot Tracker are taking elite level analytics and bringing it down to the massive youth and amateur markets. And we are endeavoring to be the next most significant thing that happened to youth sports, and we're starting with basketball. And Davion, the reason why he couldn't be here is Shaq showed up at our booth with TNT, so he had to take care of that. They couldn't fit Shaq and I in the same camera angle, so they needed somebody taller to do that.
So I got replaced by Shaq. Is that what you're telling me? That's okay.
I tried to find the nicest way I could to bring it.
Let's start with some questions. Cal, I want to start with you. There's a debate in this space, and we've heard it through the previous discussions, about the importance of accuracy. Some say that this isn't rocket science, and it really doesn't matter, but some demand precise accuracy for these wearables. What do you think?
Definitely, I vote for accuracy. And on top of accuracy, what are also important, for example, especially wearable, we talk about size. In this case, size do matter, and small. And of course, power consumption has to be low. In terms of accuracy, we work with a fellow of ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, who is also a top professor in a top university in Asia, to help us validate our algorithm. Now, I think in the market, for instance, for heart rate, there are a lot of people who are shipping boxes that has a check mark that says heart rate in there. But then what a lot of consumers, especially when we talk about the masses, they don't understand is that in terms of heart rate, even there are 2 types. There's one dynamic, there's one static. Now when you're sitting still, everything is accurate, but it's probably of no use. But when you're moving, when you're jumping, when you're running, you won't have that. And that's where we put our algorithm on the test by, for example, comparing to chest belts and the commercial chest belt in the market today. So that's what we do. Accuracy is very important.
So you're about the algorithm, and you have a sample product of what you have, don't you?
Yes.
So you didn't build this, but you built the technology, the algorithms that went into this. And this is headphones that will also take heart rate, correct?
Yes. This is actually a off-the-shelf headphone that we modified and put in our algorithm in there. Now, if I would not tell you that it measures heart rate, you would say that it's just like any other, That's why we call ourselves the world's smallest in terms of heart rate measuring earphone design. So these are, when we talk about the masses, these are, a lot of people are running, exercising with headphones.
Sure.
That's why we are starting there. That's why I think we need to give them the right information. Because especially when we come to heart rate, if you have any wrong information, it can be potentially fatal as well.
Sure. Let's switch the focus a little bit. I want to talk about college athletics. So, Marty and Bruce, both of you partnered with the NCAA. What were some of the challenges you faced when you tried to bring this type of technology to college athletics? And how important is that partnership with the NCAA? I'll start with you, Bruce.
Sure. So ours is, accuracy is paramount. And it's paramount for our application and for the NC2A. Our tech is positioned on the shoe of the athlete. And it tracks the location of the athlete throughout the entire court. So if they're at the foul line, it's on the screen that they're at the foul line. So we're talking centimeter accuracy. That's even more pronounced when, with our partner Spalding, we put the tech, location tech in the ball. So as that ball is sailing through the air, every single eye in the arena is on that ball. And if that ball doesn't go in, everyone knows it. Right. And if that ball goes in, everyone knows it. Right. So we're talking quad 9 accuracy. And so having tech that is, you know, that meets the NC2A standards, which has to be absolutely imperceptible, which is what your headphones do, is it monitors heart rate, is phenomenal. And I think the future of technology in terms of athletics and sports is it absolutely has to be invisible. Right. You cannot see it, and most importantly, the athletes, it must be imperceptible, and it must be dead on accurate. The ball is either in or it's out. It's either on or it's off.
So you said this is a sensor on a shoe, so it doesn't matter what kind of shoe they're wearing. Does it go on the lace? Does it go in the sole? How does it work?
Well, you know, it could be both. Okay. You can put it in the shoe like a pod, like a Nike pod, yeah. And you can put it on the shoelaces, and it works. And this is important for us for all levels. And we're starting out with the massive youth and amateur market, sure. And then going from there. So we are extremely visible. Heart rates, steps. We got to rely on the reputation of the provider, right. for that accuracy. Ours is front and center for everyone to view.
Sounds like it has to be.
Absolutely.
Ball goes in or doesn't? It's
yeah.
accurate or is it?
Yeah, and we're on display over at Hall C, and right when you walk in, and people are just amazed at that thing falling through and it not falling through and inaccurately detecting. So the future demands that we achieve perfection, sure. And invisibility.
I want to go back to Marty. Sure. We talked last year, and the thing that struck me was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your technology was used in the women's volleyball championship. Is that right?
It was, yes. So
okay.
That was 2 weeks ago in Omaha, Nebraska. So to answer that question that Bruce started off with was, you know, working with the NCAA and things like that, and how did that happen, right?
Right. How did it happen?
So for us, it was as soon as, and it was my alma mater found out about it first. So go Gators. And right. And as soon as they found out about it, Mary Wise, who's a living legend over there, got it right away. But she got it on 2 points. She got it on the injury prevention for the team, because there was a couple of players that were coming off injury, and they were literally like having interns count every jump. And so when they saw that, that was the big thing for her, is now she has this platform where she can manage every player on the team. The second part of it was, she's the type of person that wanted to bring women's volleyball to the limelight. And what happens, like you'll see in August with the Olympics, it will be the foundation sport in Rio, and especially with beach volleyball, and then it kind of goes away in this country. In other countries, it's still like the #2 sport. In some countries, it's the #1 sport. But she was a big advocate for it. And so when the SEC ESPN network launched, basically the coaches found out about our stuff, as well with, I'm sure, a lot of the products here, and they just tell everyone about it, and they're raving fans. So it was the raving fans that got us through and said, we have to show this, because, you know, one of her players is 6'4". I think she's actually 6'5". Anyhow, and she could jump 37 inches. So she's jumping higher than 95% of the college men's players, which is amazing. And to be able to show that on a Jumbotron in real time for the fans is this wow experience. And then so when we started working with SEC ESPN and they started showing it on TV, now all of a sudden it's a whole new dynamic, just like you saw for the first time the yellow line, or you saw pitch speed in baseball, or you'll see some shot tracking hopefully soon with that type of stuff. It changes the viewer perspective, and I think that's the exciting part of wearables right now. We're at the beginning stages of all this stuff.
I want to go a little bit deeper, because you said something that's quite interesting, but injury prevention.
Yeah.
So is your technology being used in practices as well?
Yeah, so it's used in you know, most of the volleyball teams in the country are using it in practice for injury prevention solely. And so even though we knew that was important, it's probably the primary focus of the company now, and that's why we came out with intensity measurements to overlap with it as well. So, and then in our team, the national team for USA Volleyball, especially the women's and men's team and beach, but mostly the women's team, they were the first ones to use it. And There's nothing more rewarding than a guy like Harsh Guy, who's a three-time gold medalist in the Olympics, will send you an email saying thank you. Thanks for keeping my players healthy. And then you get the same email from another player who's playing overseas right now, because that's where they make their money in volleyball.
Sure.
And thank you as well. And those are the big things I think wearables are going to change with athletes.
So I want to stay with athletics, but I want to move towards the elite athlete. So Dwight, share your thoughts on how Olympic athletes, college athletes, runners, swimmers, basketball players, whoever, are using this type of wearable technology, and how they're using the collected data, and where you see this tool heading in the next 2-3 years.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to say that I would have loved to have had this technology when I was competing, because maybe I would have won 6 world championships instead of 5. But it definitely gives you.
He only won 5.
It gives you that very important data, and it helps take away the guessing work for you. Because as a coach, sometimes you just really don't know. You can see with the naked eye, but you don't know the exact approximation. And as we say here, there's zero margin for error, because in the Olympic Games or the World Championships, whether you're a swimmer, or a cycler, or a triathlete, it goes down to the 100th of a second sometimes. So the margin for error can make a difference between a large sum of money. So I think most importantly, it's going to help address specifically where athletes can make improvements. Because when I was an athlete, I was one of the world's fastest 60-meter runners, but I had one season where I was exceptionally very good. But the other seasons, I wasn't as good, because I just didn't understand, because the physiology of the body, it changes every year. Your training methodologies change every year. My VO2 max and my acceleration and cadence and my patterns, they change depending on what point you are in each year. So this gives you that VITA data that's going to allow you to know exactly where you are, so that you can be ready to perform when it counts the most.
And athletes want that.
Athletes want that all day, every day.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's look at the history of wearables, and one might suggest that, and we heard it earlier, that technology's been around for the athletes for a while, and now it's coming down to the general masses and then the consumers. That being the case, what can we take from existing sport performance technologies, and how can we apply those to the wearables of today for the consumer? Cal and Dwight, let's start with Cal.
I think like Dwight mentioned, informations like not just heart rate, but VO2 max. These are important data. And for elite athletes, you have a coach right next to them when they train. For the mass market, for example, a lot of time you are either training by your own, right? So you have nobody to guide you. So these definitely are important. On top of that, of course, all of us want to look like him, right? You don't have a physique like him, you want to have health like him, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is also, we like to, from what they are tracking, what is important, we like to bring to the mass, because the mass would want that. Now, the challenge that we have is that the mass, it takes time to educate them. They don't necessarily understand. You don't have a one-to-one where the coach will tell you that, for example, VO2 max is a good indicator of longevity. Now, if your VO2 max is below the curve, then, okay, I'm sorry, you either do something about it, or we won't see you we will see you less than what we, probably should have seen you more, right? So in that case, we think by educating these people, the masses, by bringing this information of what elite and going to the educational stage, I think that's very important.
So Dwight had a performance coach when he was running for the Olympics. What you're suggesting is we could take that same technology and have a dashboard for health coaches or personal trainers to give that same level of experience than what he was getting as an Olympic athlete.
Absolutely. I think that's why a lot of people these days are creating a virtual coach. Now, the challenge of virtual coach, is that you don't have people there to do error correction for you.
Right.
So therefore, again, it goes back to the comment about accuracy, which is paramount. If you don't have the accuracy, information that you're going to give, it will be rubbish. For instance, today there are a lot of wristbands that are not calculating that, here I am waving my arms and waving my hand, and it's thinking that I've walked 8,000 steps. Now, that is unacceptable. Now, for example, because if I would have known that, I'm sitting on my my butt the whole day. You know, I would have said, Cal, you've been sitting your butt the whole day, you've been waving your hand, you need to get off, you need to do something. But instead, you know, a lot of the products out there will be saying, hey, you're doing good, you know, congratulations, you've done it 8,000, 10,000, you know, I'll see you tomorrow.
It's a little more persuasive, a little more
Exactly.
getting you to do something. What do you think? The technology, like what you're doing with the headphones and the coaches in the ear, how does it apply to the general mass?
Well, what I think most importantly, we're more concerned with our quality of lives, whether we're elite athletes or we're just sports enthusiasts. At the end of the day, we want to try to improve that factor so that we can live healthier lives. And as from a athletic point of view, we're really trying to defy the human limitations. Mm-hmm. And I think by us fusing those two together, we can get an accurate idea. Maybe we can be more preventative for diseases and more inclined to educate population, as Kyle said, about the small nuances that go along with this wearable technologies and applying it to everyday use so that we can live healthier, longer lives.
Absolutely.
Marty, you know, a fellow entrepreneur, I'm always interested in the life cycles of these wearables. And you know, last year you just came out with a new product. Talk about, because there's some folks out in the audience that probably would want to hear a success story like yours. So talk about Vert. What made you want to work with elite athletes, and what was the whole process behind that?
So it's kind of the story of how it started and where it goes. So the original idea was actually 20 years ago, coaching basketball actually. And then the idea never left my head. Then you fast forward to, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend my money and develop the first prototype. And so it's one of those gut checks that you get, and you spend the $20,000 the first time, and it's your own money. And then you kind of pitch the idea around, and then the key thing is to surround yourself with really good people that aren't afraid to tell you that that's bullshit or that's wonderful, okay? And then as that happens and you start revolving with the people you surround yourself with, is you see how the development happens, and you start getting the perception from actual users, right? And then after the users start using it, it gets a little bit easier to raise more capital so you can really develop and find the right people to help you start building this company. For me, I was in an awesome job in advertising and marketing, and I absolutely loved that part of it. And it was on the retail automotive side. So it was constantly making sure that, you know, this is how the sales work, and making sure that you build this amazing brand. So when I got to that point to make that leap of faith, I mean, that was the next big gut check. I had a 1-year-old kid. I was 40 years old at the time, so that was 4 years ago. And you say, is this the right timing? The reality of it is it's never good timing when you're comfortable in what you're doing and actually love what you're doing. But there was something that kept chasing me all those years. I said, you gotta do this right now. And I was really fortunate the timing of this whole space evolved and where it is right now. And I'm sure everyone on this panel right here has those same type of stories where you gotta go with your instinct, but you have to always also realize, don't waste your time. You know, when something's telling you to go for it, and I told you this last year, you know, I think every company has a story. I just think that we have a great one to tell. And I think there's a lot of those out there here as well now.
Yeah, definitely. Bruce, the partnership that you just signed with Spalding is relatively new, is it not?
Right, announced today.
Announced today. So how long have you been working on that partnership? And tell us a little bit more about, because I know this is your second iteration of a product too. The first one, the sensor was on the wrist and was on the net as well, and now you've gone to the shoe.
Right.
Tell us a little about the change of that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The first product, as you mentioned, was for consumers. This product is for elite level athletics.
So you still have the consumer product too?
We do.
Yeah.
And that was a sensor that was worn on the wrist, and it would, within 5 warm-up shots, track that shooter's specific shot pattern. And it would ignore all other spurious movements. You know, pump fakes, passes, catches, you know, behind the back, through the leg dribbles. So, but what it did is it was the GPS to cyclists, it was the pedometer to runners. Mm-hmm. You know, the basketball, you know, cyclists and runners had devices for years, but the ballers had been ignored.
Sure.
So it was, and we just, like everyone here, believes that you can't improve what you don't measure.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So the first version was measuring shot attempt, make and miss. And so now with Shot Tracker team and with our partnership with Spalding, that, in a partnership with the NC2A, that's raised it to the elite level athlete. And being able to track all aspects of the game. So not just the player and infer the game, but actually track the game. And that's where our partner Spalding came in by putting our location tech in the ball. We have it on the athlete. We now know who has possession, shot attempts, makes, misses, blocks, turnovers, time of possession, you name it.
So this is kind of groundbreaker for you. It's kind of like watching ESPN, watching NASCAR. You can see all of the.
Yeah, it
you
really
can do it
is.
with basketball now.
It really is, and we're one of those companies, I think, like Vert, that is one of the first in the field to take on team sports, and I think that's a significant accomplishment.
Was that hard partnering with the NCAA? And was that the impetus that Spalding came to you and say, we want to be part of that?
It was.
Was it?
It was. They found us, in fact, at the NC2A Final Four tournament. And, you have to be excellent and outstanding to do NC2A and to get their vote of approval because that brand is so valuable.
Sure. We have time for some audience questions. Anyone have any questions for our esteemed panel?
Do we have any questions? Oh, great.
We've got one. Yes.
It's number 11.
I have a question. We've talked a lot about accuracy today, but also another thing that comes out is language. We use the same language: stress, heart rate, sleep, walking, but we mean different things. There's a kind of layperson's understanding of these terms, and then there's the technical understanding or medical understanding of these terms, and they don't mean the same thing. When you go to a consumer market and start talking to people, like becomes potentially confusing, or is the ambiguity intentional or detrimental? What are your thoughts?
Who wants to take this one?
I'll take it.
Marty, go ahead.
How about that? I think even as my panel here to the left of me talked about accuracy, it's probably the most important thing that we had to do with jump measurements, okay? So when it comes to a jump measurement, it was one of the hardest nuts to crack, and that's why no one ever did it. And so that was our big focus. Now, at the end of the day, it's how high you jump. Everyone knows and can relate with that. As we've moved into intensity measurements, I think one of the things that's happening with wearables, and you hit it on the head, is it really has to be accurate. Otherwise, it's just kind of BS. And I think a lot of companies create their own or their own names for here's what the score is. And I don't think that will not ever be the direction of Vert. It's always going to be here's what that measurement is. Okay. In regards to intensity measurements, what it really is G-forces or accelerations, or in really nerdy talk, it's jerk. And so you can't go out there and market jerk. Hey, find out what your jerk is, because, or maybe it is a really good marketing thing. but you want to be able to talk to the consumer and say, do you want to measure your effort? And so there's the marketing side of things. The people who want to dig deep into the knowledge of what that actually is, I think you have to provide that information and say, this is exactly what your peak acceleration is, or your G-force, or your heart rate, or you missed the shot, period.
I do agree. At the same time, I'd like to express that, for example, our team, in our previous life, we have actually worked on what's probably the world's lightest golf swing analyzer, and which goes to the butt of the grip, so to say.
Sure.
And when you are in front of PGA coaches, again, we have a similar problem. When you have a inside out and you measure, you start reporting as outside in, or when you have a close, you report it as a square, you get a lot of red faces around. So our team being engineer oriented, we really like to have customers that challenge us to go to that level. But of course, at the same time, the necessary evil, I should say, for example, the first generation of fitness trackers, sleep analysis, so to speak. For instance, measures how many times you wake up last night to go to the toilet. That's not quite sleep analysis in our mind, but this is necessary evil. The next generation, as people start putting things back on their wrists, because there was a trend that people were not wearing watches anymore, then people want more. And that's where, in that sense, we measure, for example, heart rate variability. Mm-hmm. Heart rate variability would enable what we think sleep analysis to be. We'll be able to measure your sleep pattern, your sleep cycle, And then we will know, for instance, that 7 o'clock that you've set your alarm clock is when you are in deep sleep. At 6:50, you are not in deep sleep. I should probably wake you up at 6:50 so that you won't wake up all that groggy. Now that, in our sense, is much better sleep analysis or monitoring.
Sure. Another question? Yes, sir. Microphone's right behind you, on your left.
Hi, Dr. Asif Ali from UT Health, cardiologist for one of the NBA teams. I agree with everything said in this panel. I do a lot of research on sudden cardiac death in athletes. So the concern was just, accuracy definitely talked about like pedometer, things of that nature, and you just touched upon heart measurements. Looking at some of the data in our studies, heart rate variability is above a certain heart rate. It's really not that accurate in some of the wearables, without pointing out any of them. If you're dealing with elite athletes, as I do, you know that sudden cardiac death is a big concern, especially when you're at elite ACC or college ball and above.
Sure.
How do you address that with your, with this technology? Because that's a concern.
Well, I think we're not talking life, we're talking basket made or not. We're talking how high you're jumping. So, Cal, I hate to do this to you, but answer the doctor's question. It's a matter of life or death for some people.
Well, I think the question that you were putting in forth is, let me put it this way. We actually work on, you're right, at some point today's products doesn't really show a good HRV or heart rate in that sense. Again, it's a necessary evil. You need to balance between the consumer who is not willing to pay more. It's an educational process. But at the same time, you need to have in your back pocket something that can actually achieve that. For instance, we developed a 3-minute alternate knee raise VO2 max test with a fellow from ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine.
Sure.
Now, this is not like what you do with the K2B4, right?
It's not a stress test.
No, it's a VO2 max test.
Yeah.
It's a VO2 max test. But this test enables you to do it more frequently than you would to go into the clinic.
Sure.
Now, I recognize that there's a gap. And there's a gap that's measured not only by restricted by technology, but also by the amount that people are willing to pay. You go to a lot of retailers today, anything north of $199 or even some might argue $149, retailers are not excited about it, and you don't get that network effect, that mass market, that, oh, you have one too, I'm not going to get one effect, right? So I guess my answer to you is yes, we do recognize that. You just have to have that kind of work, and being engineers, most of us in our company, we like to be challenged to that level. But sometimes we do need to, dumb down in order to be able to explain to the consumer. But then that doesn't mean that we will sacrifice accuracy, because you don't know who's going to get their hands on your device and they say, hey, this is rubbish.
Did you say you work with the NBA?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'll add a little bit to it. So our first client in the NBA was the Miami Heat, and they found out about us, and we're located in South Florida, so it was just a wonderful connection right off the bat. And that was their primary thing, is they wanted to obviously know it has to be accurate, it has to work, it's got to be easy to use, and when you're dealing with elite level players, it's got to be really easy to put on quickly when they're doing all the different things. I'm sure there's all those challenges as well with it. And so I think what's going to happen with wearables is not just one thing. Heart rate is one very, very important piece, but I think when you add other measurements to it, like for us it was jump load. So you could take a jump load for the entire practice and know exactly how many did and how high and all those analytics, which is a whole separate thing. And then now you can add intensity measurements with it, so you can take all the G-forces that they actually did on their body for all the different activities that they did, and then tie that in with heart rate. And when you have that combination, then you can be really, really scientific and aggregate that data. And I think it's going to happen more and more with all these other wearable companies out there that we're surrounded with over here, is as you start combining measurements, now you have real measurements. So when you hear things like we're giving you workload or things like that, it's kind of generic right now, because what is that? If I'm a volleyball coach or a basketball coach or a luge coach, I just wanted to give an Olympic reference, because I think I'd be really good at it, by the way, okay? I think that's what's going to happen with everything, is you just keep combining it all, and that's going to give the real things that you're looking for as a doctor, I think.
in one word from each one of you, could you tell me what your device has to do with the fitness of an athlete?
That's a
Bruce,
good
you're
question.
first.
Context.
Context.
Thank you.
Marty, don't let me down.
One word, Marty. Do it. You can do it.
It's combo. It's injury prevention.
There's
All
a
right.
dash between that. Injury dash prevention.
I got it.
Dash.
I'll take it. Dwight?
I would say it's kind of a two-word deal too. Specific measurement.
Specific measurement.
Great. Cal?
I suppose I can't use Chinese, huh? Intensity.
Intensity.
Because when you're measuring certain things, you want to be able to control. You don't want to over-exercise and get beyond that and not come back. So intensity is what we are trying to help customers control.
That's great. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. I think this was a great panel. Can we please give a round of applause for our very last panel?